right, I think we are good. Let me just check everything. Awesome. All right, let me pull this up. Hello everybody, welcome to a camera class on a Monday, a little bit different than what I normally do. But I am out of town this upcoming weekend, so I just wanted to make sure that I got us the camera class in the order that I should have. This week is going to be the advanced camera class. So for advanced cameras, we are looking at the next step in our camera evolution, which is really getting into more of our how to take a good photo, what attributes and things we should be looking for, as well as what goes into photo editing. And we'll end on some things that I have about advanced accessories and equipment that you yourself might want to pick up as you start to advance or upgrade on your camera journey. So let's start by getting into tips for taking great photos. For all of you that have been here before from last week and the week before this is the next evolution in our class schedule. In our intro to cameras, we talked mainly about taking a good photo, what went into kind of the basics of, not what went into taking a photo, but we talked about the basics of photography. We talked about the automatic settings and the more entry-level things you need to know when taking photos. In the intermediate class, we break away from automatic and we get more into the manual control. I'm trying to make sure that we break into more of what it takes to shoot manually. Now in today's class, we'll be going over the things that I just mentioned prior, which is how to take a good photo, editing your photos, and then what goes into some advanced accessories that you might need, whether it's content creation or as photos that you're doing. So step one, we're going to start by looking at portrait photos. Portrait and item or just basic everyday photography can coexist under two different subjects or in those subjects. Landscape, architecture photography, we can also hold into another. So when looking at this, when it comes to portraits, whether that's people, plants, objects, pets, whatever it might be, those singular items or groups of items, those would be your portrait type photos. When it comes into landscape, architecture, or wider angle, wider fields of focus, then we're going to have more conversation on that. So to start, one of the simplest techniques you can employ with portrait photography is filling the frame. Making sure that you crop in on the image and get rid of dead, excess, negative space can help clean and pretty up the image while not ruining what the main subject matter was, which in this case is our model. For those of you online who have questions, you can chat in questions at any point in time. Eyes in the top third of your image. When you break an image down into three different sections, there is a bottom, middle, and a top row. The top row is where the eyes live, or they should live. If we think about humans as far as proportions go, in order to consistently keep it with a natural eye flow that we have, putting the subject matter's eyes in the top third of the image will naturally help create more of a guidance or a perceived guidance by your viewer. Keeping the eyes where they're located scientifically will help guide your viewers through the image in a way that's more natural to humans. But it's an easy technique that you can employ and use while you're shooting. And if the eyes don't work for you in your image as you're shooting, try to get the eyebrows in there. Eyes or eyebrows in the top third will work. But again, it's just a nice way for us to read and naturally follow this image. When all else fails on humans and subject matter, focusing in on the eyes is typically the way to go. Eyes naturally are an easy subject matter piece to pick up on, but secondary in photography too. Most of your mirrorless and DSLR cameras have advanced eye tracking software to keep the subject not only in focus, but to really make sure that they focus in on the eyes because of how descriptive and interesting they can be on our subjects as we're taking photos. When it comes to children or kids that are maybe smaller, or just anybody in general that is shorter, rather than taking a photo from above and aiming it downwards, try to get on their level. While this photo might seem fantastic and great as a candid shot that you show your friends or your family, you might want something that looks a little bit more professional to boost off, maybe what you're capable of on a wider scale. So simply dipping down and employing techniques that we might have learned in our advanced camera class, or our intermediate camera class, can help deliver us something more like this. With a blurred out background, something that's probably closer to a 4.5 to maybe a 4 for an aperture. We're probably sitting at a lower shutter speed, something at a 1 1/50th of a second, because we don't need to be that fast. And ISO looks really good because of how much light we have coming from this. So probably about a 400 or 800 ISO on this. Those types of things mixed in with dipping our body a little bit lower instead of shooting downwards at the children create a more professional photo. So simple measures like that can go a long way in your photography gain and experience. Now you might have seen grids on all of my photos that I just showed, and that is what we call the rule of thirds. The rule of thirds is pretty simple. We split photos up in between 3 different sections. There is a top, a middle, and a bottom, but then there's also 3 more sections, a right, center, and a left. Those sections intercross within each other and create 4 different circles. Those circles are what we call the rule of thirds. And the idea is that if an image's subject matter can land on the rule of thirds, we can create a more naturally stimulating image to the viewer, something that we might do indirectly, but something that if we can control this and do it purposefully, we might be able to make an impactful image that people are more drawn to. Some examples of that. I have this image here. When you look at an image like this, we can easily see where we're crossing the rule of thirds, including his shadow as well. So something like this is an easy idea of how we can achieve something like the rule of thirds. Same idea with this image. On the left-hand side of the image, the little girl is hitting the rule of thirds perfectly. We have a lot of other things that are going on within the scene that bring out this nice dramaticism, but there is something about not cropping down and removing the excess space, allowing the whole scene to play out, with this little girl almost being the main, if not, she is the main focus point of the image that we're seeing. And a simple one that you yourself, your partner, or a photographer can do if you're trying to take this photo of another family. This one uses a little bit of perspective on there too. You bring the daughter and the son up closer and bring the other two, the mom and the dad, backwards, keeping them in a very similar plane, but then also dividing them up nicely so they both hit the rule of thirds. This would be a beautiful type of photo that you could probably accomplish and then hang in your home, or even present it and take photos like this for clients in XYZ. And this is a silly one, but I did like putting this. I've got Jim from The Office on here. His eyebrows are perfectly within the top third of the image, and he is hitting on that rule of thirds like I mentioned. Now if you flip and you wonder, well, this image really doesn't do too much, there's not something that's stimulating about it, it doesn't look that good, why really should I care? Well, the idea behind this image may not necessarily be that. If you're familiar with the show and the context of the show, then you might understand that this area that he's in is the conference room, and it puts a place and an area on it. Might not be necessarily that stimulating of an image, but you can see where areas like pop culture, TV, movies use these simple rules to keep our favorite characters and subject points in focus. So when it comes to landscape and architecture, horizon lines mean everything. Lines that can create symmetry, balance, or even just whole images go a long way when it comes to photography for landscape and for architecture. Your horizon line is where your ground and your sky or background, your foreground and your background meet. There's typically a line that then separates the two. In this case of this photo, the line is the edge of the water right as it meets the mountains. The mountains and the sky are our background, and the foreground is our water. We're sitting on top of the horizon line, so we only see what's above. Now, if somehow we were able to go under the water and do this, technically we'd be below the horizon line. Again, we can see that having the horizon line almost splits the image into two. And with this landscape water mixture, we're really getting a beautiful reflection that comes off that creates balance within this horizon line. And that is a huge aspect that is important to landscape and architecture photography, is balance and symmetry. Balance and symmetry go a long way in through this whole situation. Balance requires that within the photography that you put a little bit of thought as far as what you're loading onto your horizon line, but then also how you're loading up the rule of thirds. Think about that balance within where those thirds hit. In this case, the balance and the symmetry comes into effect with the rows of lavender that we have going down and the walk paths in between. From there, then, we have that tree that's directly in the middle, and our horizon line is pretty darn close to the exact middle point of our photo. You add in that extra bit of chaos that comes in from the lightning clouds and the color that radiates from it, and overall you have a really beautiful image that shows off all the characteristics that you're looking for within landscape photography, and then add in that little bit of pizzazz with the lightning. It really goes a long way. The balance, symmetry, that horizon line, they all play a huge effect into knowing and how to do landscape and architecture photography. Another good example, you've got the trees directly in the middle, both sides of mountains and trees that are basically mimicking each other perfectly. The water, which has a great reflection off of it as well too. It's really overall a beautiful scene, but an easy thing to accomplish if you can just remember where your horizon lines are and to check for the balance and the symmetry as and before you're shooting. And then I always like to end on this note because, again, not all of these photos have to be so artistically beautiful and capture this magnificent, larger-than-life scene. Some of them can be as simple as a straightforward street that has a line that cuts down the middle of it that divides this photo into two halves. That is a great way of understanding not only symmetry, but also understanding landscape, balance, and being able to vision that, but in a literal sense. One of the other tips that I usually give people too is the sun on your back. And what I really want to impress upon you in this is that the sun is your friend. Light is your friend within photography, and understanding how to control and manipulate light better is extremely important and beneficial to you, the photographer. Keeping the sun on your back can be a bad idea, but if you can open yourself up to sun and to the sunlight, manipulate some of your camera's controls, you can really lighten up a subject without having to have fancy controls, lighting, or other equipment that you might not have. In this one, the bad one, we can see that the gentleman has the fish in front of his head. His baseball cap is down, position low, and you can already tell that ISO and the actual exposure is much lower due to how harsh the shadows are, not only on him, but the rest of the boat. By tipping the hat back up, opening the shoulder, removing the fish away from the front of his face, and then the camera user playing on that to make the camera more sensitive to the light available, we take the bad image and we can make it so much better. Now, we've talked about taking a good photo. Let's talk a little bit about editing a photo. Photos come in two different varieties. For the most part, you're going to see JPEG files, or you're going to see RAW/DNG files. RAW is pretty much borderline across the board what you'll see. If you're a Leica user, you might see DNG, and some other brands have their own file software for their more advanced photos. Looking at this, we can see the difference between a raw JPEG and processed RAW displayed via images in front of us. The raw photo is muted. It doesn't look like it has full color. It almost feels washed out or flat. The JPEG comes to life more, but still, we're not getting a lot of variation and separation between the colors. Things look muted, muddled. But in a processed raw image, we're bringing out the best of all of what the RAW offers. The RAW is a larger file format that when used and actually shot upon properly can turn into something really beautiful and amazingly rendered. But that requires work and you actually going through and editing and playing with the image. If you are interested in doing that, then you're probably going to want to shoot with a RAW file. For anyone who's interested in editing, RAW is definitely the way to go. If you're someone who's interested but maybe not sure, you can always set your camera to take both JPEG and RAW photos. Typically it'll take in more space, but it does work. A JPEG is a compressed file. It's typically a smaller file size, 2 to 6 megabytes. It has a lower color bit. This can be used and edited on any photo editor. So with JPEGs, you don't have to worry about buying something fancy. Anything will do, and it can be transferred extremely fast. On the flip side of that, the RAW file is an uncompressed file. It's usually a larger file size, something around 12 to 16 megabytes. Has a higher color bit, 12-bit to 16-bit. And it can be edited on RAW. It can be edited as RAW on some editing softwares, but most likely will have to be converted into another file. So the best way to look at this is that when you're shooting, RAW files can be edited, but most of the time they will need those more advanced softwares. So JPEG, there's a lot of trade-offs between the RAW. Overall, the best quality on an image is going to come from the RAW. There's no escaping that. However, between the two, you'll notice that there are qualities that make both of them uniquely better in their own ways. But now let's talk about the basics of editing photos. These are things I learned when I was a student that I still use to this day. I will say this much. I'm going to go in the order of how I start and how I get to the end. But I will say that while you're editing and you're doing this, you might have to go back in, change things up, and go and play with the different numbers and what you have available. Just because you've edited one thing does not mean that's finally done and finished. You might have to go back in and change and fix up a couple other things. That's all part of the photo editing process. So step one to my process. Oh, before I even say that, this is why we edit photos. In the big scale of things, taking a photo, 80% of the battle comes from you and the camera. You're not going to be able to reshoot that photo once you get it. That photo that you took is most likely the way it's going to look, and it's never going to change truly dramatically without AI or other things. That's a whole different story, and we're not going to get into that. But when it comes to photo editing, 20% of the final touches and the final battle that you might have to experience as the photographer is going to come through the battle of editing your photos. Why does that necessarily matter? Well, it brings certain details and qualities of our photos out that we might not have been able to get from the camera. You can see areas like in the bottom right corner where the girl's hair is brighter after we edit. Her face has more color to it, and things like her eyes pop out and stand out more. On the left side, you can see the little baby. As it's been edited and changed, it's softer, its features are more fetal, and it's just more in tune with what that baby kind of quality is like. You have the right photo, or the top right corner of the landscape, that's become much more light and is softer looking. And on the left-hand side, you have the two standing next to each other. And on the right-hand side of that image, the edited version has more color, it pops, the two stand out, it's not as flat. There's benefits to it. So editing our photos, it's to capture the 20% extra of the photo that we're not getting from the photo itself. Here are some great editing softwares that you can look into. I recommend any one of these. I've tried a few of them myself and I do like them, but everyone's different on what they like. Photoshop has been one of the dominating resources or been one of the dominating sources for years, but other systems exist too and can offer you a lot of usage and features that are very competitive to what Adobe has to offer. So step one to editing is to crop and clean your image. Start by straightening the alignment of the photo. After that, go through and make sure that you do not have too much excess negative or dead space. Spot cleaning should also occur at this time. The next step is to adjust your white balance. White balance doesn't refer to the exposure, rather it refers to the color of your overall composition. You will have less to play with when shooting in the standard JPEG versus RAW, and some editors are going to have presets that you control and change, others will have temperature and tint, and some will have both. This is something that you can set on your camera as well too, but a lot of the times if you are setting this or if you're running automatic on this program, it might not look right, and this is your chance in the photo editor to go back and adjust the white balance setting that maybe your camera wasn't properly tuned to. Adjusting your exposure and contrast. Exposure plays on the brightness and the darkness of a photo. Beware of making a photo too bright because you can get a muted or muddled look to your photo. And you can see that on the bottom right image. The underexposed is extremely dark, overexposed looks washed out, and then that middle section looks just right. Contrast plays with the dark and the light tones. High contrast will make the image very stark with very dark and light sections. Low contrast will make things look flat and washed out. Your goal is always to aim for the middle. And that's a great example of the left side image. The before and after is a great result of how you can take a standard photo that might look average and edit it to look more doomy, gloomy, more dramatic, and that's what you're getting in the after side. Taking both of those and putting them together, that's the middle photo, and you can see the before and after there of how not only is it lighter, but now you can really see the areas of where rocks are dark and rocks are lighter based on where moisture, water, shade, sun is all hitting the objects. So it's a little bit more expressive in that center section, but that's a great option of taking both of those two and pulling them together. Within that measuring of light, white balance, exposure, contrast, contrast. Talk about the saturation next. Histograms. Histograms measure light. A histogram isn't always needed when editing photos, but a histogram is a great way to see how light is distributed through the image. So one section you should see highlights, midtones in the other, and shadows in the next. All of that is the measure of luminosity throughout. Midtones should dominate your image, shadows should be a giant portion, and highlights should be minimal because they're truly stark white. We don't want that to muddle our image overall. I like showing this because I like to express to people histograms are not always needed. Do they show off great information? Yes. If you look on the left-hand side, you can clearly see the over, the properly, and the under of the exposed images that we have there. But if we look at the right side of our slide here, we can see all these other images that have a non-traditional histogram. Those images look fine, they look okay, there's nothing wrong with them. If anything, they look really nice. But they're a great example of how histograms tell us the distribution of light, and we know through our own process and our own reading of a histogram what it should look like. But does that always mean that it's correct? No, not necessarily. The next thing we should be looking at is vibrancy and saturation. Vibrancy will increase or decrease the color intensity in brighter colors throughout your image. Saturation will increase or decrease color throughout the whole image evenly. It's important that as we're going through and we're playing with color, that we've played with most of our exposure and our contrast. We've dealt with almost a black and white concept of the photo. That's going to then truly show us where our saturation, our color is then at, which then gives us the ability as the editor to really play with that. If we look at vibrancy, which is the image on the right-hand side, we can see the drastic change from going to -100 to +100 vibrancy, and how the brightest portions of the image start to pop out the more that we do that. Saturation, on the other hand, will take those brightest proportions now, and then we'll still take all the color evenly throughout the photo and advance or de-advance that. So we can see that using those two hand in hand, we can bring out the color and turn something from a little bit more gloomy and doomy to something a bit more whimsical and lighthearted. But it's amazing because we have the ability to do that by just playing with the intensity of colors within our image. Sharpness. Now, sharpness is one of the last things I do when editing my photos, because to me it's the thing that brings the photo together. So I will say this much to any viewers watching at home: this should be the last step that you do, and by that I mean, if you look at your image right now as you've been editing, and you feel as if it's still not quite to where you want it to be, I highly recommend going back through and playing with the color and everything else that's in there, the saturation, the contrast, and adjusting it appropriately so that it meets your needs a little bit more effectively. Then I would go through and play with the sharpness. Being the last thing that you do after you've edited all the other parts of your image, sharpness is going to bring out definition and depth of field within the image, and this is so spectacular when you're shooting on a raw image. You have to be careful. If you turn your sharpness all the way up or too high for the image that you have, you might get this little bit of a halo effect where the image looks almost washed out. And I think that the fox in the bottom left corner does a nice job. Nothing's really too much clearer or defined, but I do feel as if we have something like halo effect kind of going around the actual fox. This is something that I've recently started preaching in this class, and I will strongly stay on the topic. Be proud of the images that you took, whether they're family photos or photos from your vacation. You should do something more than just make it your wallpaper on your phone or on your computer. Just think about displaying or printing your photos. Nowadays, if you're shooting on a crop sensor, ASPC Micro Four Thirds, I'd recommend the top row of sizes. And if you're shooting in a full frame camera or a medium format, I'd recommend the bottom row or the top row, depending on what size you'd like for your home. And if that's not something that you're interested in, look at a digital picture frame. They can hold thousands of images on there, and it's a great way for you to show off your vacation, so when friends or family come over, they can also see it too. So don't be afraid of showing off your work, is really what I'm trying to say. Now the last thing I'll close this class up with is videography and advanced accessories. Again, I've taught you the basics, I've taught you the intermediate, we've gone through a little bit about photo editing and taking good photos, but video is becoming more and more popular. A lot of companies and people who are entrepreneurs or self-business starters are hiring people to take videos of their product. And a lot of people are on the opposite side where they're going out buying cameras and learning how to do video so they can then better create content for their business or for their job. When you're filming those videos for content or for whatever it is you're doing, there's three main phases: pre-production, production, and post-production. All three of these things are extremely important when we're taking photo or video because it's important that we document everything. Pre-production is the initial steps to begin making your project. It's your idea phase. Production is the main phase of capturing your clips and your things. This is putting all the notes and the work you did for pre-production into effect. Post-production is then you actually going through and putting together the final piece so that way you can present it, you can post it, you can do whatever it is you're trying to accomplish. Within that, it's important to keep three main factors of your video in mind: video resolution, ratios, and frames per second. If we start with video resolution, this is quite simply the quality of video that you're having. Depending on where you're posting this is where you want to consider the quality of your video. For the most part, 8K TVs and technology isn't as far as advanced as 4K and HDR. So using something that's 4K is probably going to be more than enough for the video you're trying to produce for YouTube or for social media. But maybe your camera's not even capable of either of those things, or the SD card you're using isn't capable of shooting in that quality. So those are factors that can play based on equipment, availability, and in my opinion, where you're posting the final project. Ratios are more of a personal subject choice than they are a benefit. A 4:3 ratio means you're using the entire sensor of your camera. 3:2 means you'll have smaller black bars. 16:9 will have black bars. And then the 1:1 is just a square image. Again, why does any of that matter? The reason it matters is because it's on there, it's showing, and you can choose to use that if you want to create something that's more artistic or expressive for whatever you're trying to do. The 1:1 could be a great option if you're doing things for social media like Instagram or Facebook, where you get the little square block that your video is going into. Last but not least is frames per second. When you think about video, the only way that you can truly describe video is as a series of moving pictures. That is the true definition of video. Within that, though, it's frames. We don't call them pictures, we call them frames. The frames, each frame stacked on top of each other, shows motion and movement, and that's where videos come into play. If we're doing things that are standard, slow, simple, basic, for example, the news. If you're watching the news, or maybe like Saturday Night Live or the sketch comedy show, most of them are using 12 to 24 frames a second. It's a standard industry thing. When you watch action movies with slow motion scenes and dramatic finishes, a lot of them are using 60 to 120 plus frames a second because there's more motion captured within that, which means we can slow it down, we can play with it more, we can edit things more finely, and really bring out a beautiful look to our video. When shooting a video, there's really three main things you have to focus on: camera quality, lighting, and audio quality. When I first started teaching this class, they told me simply, two have to be good, one can be bad, it's your choice. Don't sit there and watch a video that you make where the sound quality is bad, the video quality is bad, and the lighting is bad. If you have good audio and good lighting, and the camera quality is so-so, you'll still get views, or you'll at least still capture an audience. If lighting is good, audio is bad, the camera's good, lighting's good, audio is bad, you'll still get something. And if audio is good, camera's good, but lighting's bad, you'll still get something. The point is that you really want to take the time when looking at this whole thing, and remember that in video, in production, in photo, in anything, nothing is by chance or accident. Subject matter, what appears in front of your camera could be depending on what you're shooting, but the control and the quality for the camera, the lighting, and the audio is nearly consistent across the board for every major production that you watch. You don't necessarily have to be that, but you should find ways to make it so that way you consistently can continue to have good camera quality, good lighting, or good audio, or whatever is appropriate for your setup and what you're doing. This is an example of one of the best lighting formats you can have. The key light, the backlight, and the fill light. The key light is your main light, that's what hits the subject. The fill light comes in to get anything the key light couldn't, and the backlight is simply there to make sure your background and foreground are separated. This is the most ideal setup you can have, but is it practical? Is it what everyone can do? Absolutely not. Therefore, alternative lighting does exist. On-camera flashes, on-camera LEDs or light blocks and ring lights, it all exist, and they're great products that you can add to your camera arsenal that'll help a lot. Next are the microphones. In-camera mics are great, but if you are someone who's maybe purchased a TV in the last little bit, you might know that TVs don't have great speakers, therefore you should have a soundbar or audio system. Microphones and cameras are no different. On-camera mics like shotgun mics, wireless mic system, lav mics, or even boom mics all exist and will bring a much deeper and better audio quality to your videos than the standard microphone on the camera would do. For stabilizing your shot, which is an extremely important aspect of taking photos or video, is not having a shaky grip. There's so many different things that you can do. The most basic or the starter are the pods. So monopods, still photo tripods, or ball head joint tripods, or video tripods are all great things that you can add on or use for your content creation. Single-handed gimbals, two-handed gimbals, and body gimbal / stabilizer vests also exist and can offer more hands-on experiences to stabilize and control your shot. And that's all I have for you for this week. And again, I know that we normally do these on Thursdays, so I do apologize to everyone for who normally comes to these on Thursdays, who isn't going to be here for that. Luckily, this video will get saved and uploaded immediately, so you will be able to re-watch this for anybody who wasn't able to be here. But yes, this is the advanced camera class for this Monday. This was the advanced camera class for this Monday. Does anybody have any questions, comments, or concerns for me that's watching online? Would anyone like to chat in or ask any questions? All right, well, it doesn't look like many of you guys have questions for me, so I'll leave it for there. Next Thursday will be the Beyond the Traditional camera class, so we'll be getting more into drones, GoPros, camcorders, and 360 cameras, kind of the next evolutionary step within your camera journey. And then from there, we'll restart this camera class back in October. So for everybody out there, thanks for watching, guys. Again, sorry we didn't do this on Thursday, but we will be here next Thursday, the 25th, for the 4th camera class of the month, the Beyond the Traditional cameras. So have a great night, everybody. Be safe, and as always, keep taking photos. We'll see you next month. Take care. Bye.